And thank you for all of you. The first thing I like to do is to hammer down the concept of enabling design interaction for clients and collaborators. I want one of you to come up front here and do some design interaction. What you will do is you will sit here, you will use the joystick, and you will complete a task, which is to find your way out of this station. Actually, to find your way down to the South Island platform. Is there anyone that is brave enough to come and, I'm looking here. Great, please, come up. What is your name?
Karen.
Karen, thank you, Karen. So you see, we are a brave industry. And what you do is, yeah, excellent. You recognize the joystick. So what you do is you're going to shoot to go forward. Shoot to go forward. Where you look is where you go. Yeah. So I'm very proud to see that Karen, within 7 seconds, was able to use our interface. I'm making no judgments here of the industry ability to interact with 3D spaces. Now, if you like, with the mouse, you can click on this button on the bottom right. It says click button, and there is your task. Yeah. So you can choose any name you like and click on the letters, and then meanwhile I tell you what you do. You look for the South Island line. It is look carefully what is written, the way it's written like, and then when you arrive at the end of your task, you're going to step over that flashing button, which will stop the recording. Karen, perfect, thank you, and off you go. Yeah, let's see. Now you are. Karen we're making the task more difficult for him than it should be, because he's actually running on a tiny screen. So only a very small portion of the field of view is actually used. And I'm going to help him a bit. If you go down that way, even though there is no sign, is a missing sign. If you go straight ahead and turn right, it will get you in the right direction. You see it says Island Line, but I can tell you that there is the South Island line there as well. Obviously, the designer there messed up a bit with the design. What you're looking at is a very complex station. So what we have is we have 2 lines, 4 platforms, which is operational. Anyone that has been in Hong Kong will have seen Admiralty Station. And we are making the station to 4 lines, 8 platforms. So currently we have, in the station, we have 8 escalators. We are going to have 64 escalators. Some of these 64 escalators are going to fly more than 3 stories across in order to take the people movement, right? So I want to stress this because I learned at school that when you do tech and you want to assess tech, you want to assess it in a non-trivial experiment. So this is your non-trivial experiment. We heard this morning from Charlie. He also brought a very vivid representation of a construction project. Again, non-trivial. You know, you are like the environment you work on. How are you doing? Sorry, I'm blathering along, and let's see where you got to. Okay, down the escalators. Yeah, make sure you don't come to the up escalator, otherwise you won't be able to go down. And so the station handles 1 million passengers per day, right? This is many times more than the busiest station in London, which is King's Cross. And the station, if you close the station, you're going to affect the GDP of the nation, right? Because Hong Kong is a nation state, and therefore. Right? So it is a piece of critical infrastructure. And we are digging down 3 levels underground, so it's an underground skyscraper, if you wish. It goes to minus 35 meters while the station is operational. So there is 1 million people in Hong Kong, 1 in 6 people because of the size of the country, and meanwhile you have arrived. So there you go. Thank you. And we switch on to the PowerPoint. Not bad. Now, what Karim has demonstrated is what we call crowdsourcing design feedback, or some famous architects talks about it as post-occupancy evaluation pre-construction. I was like, wow, that's a cool definition, right? Now you see 2 minutes, sorry, this is unreadable. Just to finish, you see the time that Karim took was 2 minutes 43. So when I spoke to Jason from RMJM, the designer of the station, I said, what were you designing for? You know, this is a complex thing. We described it really complex. And he said, well, the client said we want a 21st century station. Naturally, you don't want to design something old. And it has to be, you have to get from anywhere to anywhere in a minute and a half. Now, I know I don't want to say to Karim that, you know, joysticking around is the same as walking around the station. But in terms of human decision making, you took the decisions, you etc. And it has been really exciting to see thousands and thousands of people doing it, and to see the variety, you know, different people respond very differently. So we are going to switch to the slides. Thank you. And I'm going to rattle through a few slides to show you what we mean by enabling design interactions. And then next. Oh, sorry, I have the clicker in here. Thank you. So I mentioned already the challenge, so we are ahead. The benefits, I'm going to tell you the benefits in a second. I'm going to tell you a little bit of what are the next steps. Take into account that this work was delivered in around 2013, so we are 10 years later. Hopefully some of the next steps are real. And of course, looking at what Cobus presented filled me with joy, you know, because a lot of the stuff that we were climbing walls and glass to try and get it work, it is now happening like that. And that's where Julia here, thank you, Julia, will be, I will switch to Julia, and Julia will show how all of this specialist stuff that is in the hands of people like yourselves will go into the hands of everyone else. And when I say everyone else, specifically the actors in the construction industry, all these architects that don't want to see any. I mean, architects like Tim, I don't know you guys, but I never find them. They are very, very rare. And opportunities and conclude. So this is the station, 35 meters underground, the first 3 levels, concourse, and the upper and lower, the main concourse upper and lower platforms are already existing, and we build all this giant atrium going down, and we have the shut-in central link and the South Island line. And there is also a mezzanine to shift people around. By the way, given that 10 years went by, this is all built. And if you have been or you are going to Hong Kong, you will find phase 1 open. I'm going to focus on signage design. Please make the effort to go from signage design to any design. But in order to give you some tangible benefits, I'm going to focus on signage design. So this is current practice in signage design. It was current practice in 2015. I think most of you will agree that it's current practice today. And you see the sort of description over there. It means this one up here. It means that there is a lift over here, and that lift only goes from one floor to the other one, not all the 5 stories. Good luck from imagining this, reviewing this, and deciding whether it will work or not. So what we provided is an environment that is that contains all of the signage models. So here you see page 5 of 33. This station has around 1,000 signs, 970, and it has around 330 unique, approximately 330 unique sites. So you have the sign type, that's the geometry, a bunch of three signs, etc., and a bunch of graphics. And you can imagine that is nice and complex. Here, with the other thing, the client was interested. The signage design in this project is designed by the MTR itself. Annie, that produced the signage design, she was working within the client side. So what we produced for her is an interface to her station to do that. And here you see a signage CCTV interaction. Now, the screenshot is not particularly good, but there is a point in which you can't see the face of the person coming up because you have the X on top and you want to reposition. When you reposition, I think we heard from Cobus, you update the output file. Again, this is all programmed by us, so we actually output a text file, and then the text file goes to improve the Excel. And this is, again, it shows the complexity. One of the things that is interesting is that we as Arup were responsible for technical advice. And so what we did is we took Annie's design and then we checked it. And what we found is that out of the 970 signs, 235 signs were wrong. Wrong, of course, this is the final design, by the way. It's the one that goes to construction. And when I say wrong because, of course, signage design is not, it's an art, it's not a science, right? You know, what's good for me doesn't necessarily be good for you. And then at the end, with discussions, we got to 148 signage change, which is your 15%, roughly like that. How do you influence your client? Anyone that is an architect will sympathize with that. You influence your client because every single journey is recorded. And so you give it to enough people, you make them do enough mistakes, and then you then convince the client. And that is the process that was used. Here you see the possible journeys. I told you the station was complex, so you see very large numbers. The client has also used it to position or sell their advertising spaces. This design has a massive advertising spaces, so they were able to discuss it with and price it according to what looked better. This is all before the station was done, and then of course staff training. So this is the benefits that we found. Now, one benefit that we didn't foresee is the fact that signage design is a technical expertise. But here we have Finola. She is pre-university. Now she's 10 years later, she's married with a baby. But at the time, she was pre-university, and she came in the company for Christmas, and I had to do babysitting for her and her twin sister. And so what I did, I gave one the CCTV, one the signage with the abacus and the drawings, and I got them to build, virtually build in the space. What came out is that it was extremely accurate. And so this is a threat for the profession, right? Because all of your specialism becomes intuitive. Now, moving on, of course, this opportunity, we had the opportunity in 2014 to go to Biennale in Venice. That was the year of Rem Koolhaas, and Rem Koolhaas had all the different elements, and there was one room called the elevator room, and there was nothing about the past, the present, and the future of the elevator is always the same thing. Elevators haven't changed. And so it was very hard to fill the room. So he said, why you have 64 of them, can you exhibit? And so what we did is we put this self-manning kiosk that you just have seen demonstrated, and we put it there, and we asked them to find the South Island line, and And here is the interface which you have seen, and this is the result. So what we see here is the slowdown points. So we only highlighted those journeys that where the user, if your user was going, we wouldn't highlight. And so you see some problems. You notice that Karam got a little stuck down here. This is because there is a missing sign. So what we see is the effect of the design, right? And then at that time, so this is the example, right? Here, a lot of people like Arup got stuck at that point. Here, a bit less people. Why do they get stuck when it says South Island line quite clearly? Sorry about your screenshot. You won't be able to see it. The reason is because some people don't believe signs when they don't see the destination. I was explained by our human factor specialist. Here is another one. The sign is right in front of you. Why can't you just follow it? And the reason is because there is a mixed signs, and when people get in front of conflicting informations, they stop. So all of this messy conflict with the humans. So what were the next steps then? The first one is obvious, is you don't have the opportunity to go and exhibit at the Biennale all the time, so can we do it online? And I want you to see this in the context of Kobu's presentation, right? Yes, you can. So why are we as designers not actually putting our designs, especially when they're public designs and etc., out for people to give us feedback? Yeah. The other next step is simulations. Kobus already have shown simulations, and here is an early example where we asked, Arup is full of this different specialisms. So here we had acoustics, the sphere, we had little arrows are the air movement, the trees are designed to make a sustainable city. The surfaces are light, so lots of light on the roof and little on the facade. And then there was people movement and vehicle movement. So 6 different simulations into one. I think I wanted to show you this image. So here, this is a pretty boring massing model. So how do you develop, how do you sell and communicate a pretty boring massing model that is of a sustainable city as opposed to be an unsustainable city? The way you could do it is by showing that you see this, all this blue and cocooned environment, right? What does it mean? It means that in terms of ventilation, these arrows go all over the place. That is good if you want to read a newspaper in that courtyard. Yeah, you have very low air movement, and it goes in every direction, not a strong wind that blows you away, the newspaper. Also, you have the blue, the noise is very confined. So the design of Dongtang at the time, the sustainable city of the future, was for China. It was the idea was that you create large courtyards and you have most of the activity of the city in the courtyards. This leads me to say that ideally you can design for whatever you want, but if you were going to design for sustainable development and if you were going to design for towards a net zero in construction operations and possibly a regenerative design, you will come out with radical innovation, and you may need this kind of technology. Other simulations, this is a more recent image of mass motion. This is Arup behavioral simulation. Here is a giant demonstration of it. Downstairs, you will see our colleagues, and you will be able to find much more about it. Lastly, another thing I told you at the beginning, we are not designing only signage, but we are also, we can apply to anything you design. So our friend Giulio Antonuto in Arup has delivered the second of these examples. We are back to the idea of enhancing design interaction with clients and collaborators. So here what he's doing is, this is a broadcast planning app. So the client, La Liga, brought all of the stadiums into an interactive world, and here the television, which is the major reason why you play football, is to generate the content in order for the broadcast. For the broadcast, they could actually explore the broadcast at the time of day, at the day of the year they wanted by themselves, right? And so now it's moved on to another another nation beyond Spain. So on this, the last one of the next steps is the most important one. And this is how do we democratize all this. All the work that you've seen is all done by specialists within Arup, collaborators, and etc. But if we are going to have any effect, and in my case, I like to have a big effect on sustainable development, on radical innovation in order to achieve net zero, we have to involve the entire industry. And we can't afford to have this circular economy architects that work in a traditional workflow. And so when Cobus and the colleagues at NVIDIA and Chris and the colleagues at Lenovo said, let's trial the Omniverse, this is what allows you to do, I was like, that is fantastic. And then luckily we found in our master planning team Julia, and so Julia has enthusiastically jumped on board, and we are going to hear from her. You're going to hear from her about her experience from a non-specialist point of view. Thank you.
So we have a master plan project, and please imagine this master plan project because it's we cannot really show it. It's a master plan project for a science lab in UK. It's counting 400 buildings, and it's a project that is going on for more than 10 years. There are several teams involved. There is the design team, the landscape team, the security team, logistic team, phasing plan for 400 buildings spanning 50 years, and sustainability team to understand the circular economy of the master plan. So we decided to try this master plan on Omniverse because, as you can see, we have multiple teams. Everyone is working on a different software. Sharing the information from different softwares can be very painful. And then we have also the senior team that is providing internal reviews and the client that is providing comments and review yearly or monthly. So that's why we put our master plan file on the Omniverse nucleus, and we saved it as a USD file. And then we started to work on this new workflow. So the testing that we did for 6 months were starting from a reviewing process at start. So we were collecting comments from our senior team to understand how they can interact with the model without having to, produce drawings, but just giving them the model, and then giving to the architects comments, and the same thing to the clients. In the reviewer mode of the Omniverse, the senior team and the bigger team can actually sketch on it. It's not on the paper anymore. It's not lost in the emails. And the comments are geolocated, and they can be then exported as a PDF or an Excel spreadsheet, which is very useful for the wider team. And also, as Cobus was sharing before, you can overlay drawings. So if the client is asking how the model is changed in the last 3 years, you can see how was it like the previous 10 revisions, which is very, very interesting. And then we tested from a designer point of view. So how do we progress the design in the Omniverse workflow? And how can we improve our workflow, especially with a master plan that has been developed in Revit? So, for example, we launched the City Engine to get the concept, so that the concept is living on Omniverse Create with a different software and is not heavily based on Rhino or Revit. And then we started testing. So we had the building in Revit, the landscape team providing the landscape design in Rhino, and then also some previous assets that were developed in SketchUp. And you can see they can all be live synchronized in the Omniverse, which is the top left. And you can imagine that the more architectural team is working on the Revit, the landscape is working on the Rhino, and the visualizer maybe is using the assets from Omniverse Create, maybe from SketchUp. And then we started from very basic exercise, and we were very, very interested in that. So you can see there is a 1 and 2 at the top, handwritten. Those are the people in the live synchronization working from the office or from home. And we have the Revit master plan, which is here. And we have some other users that are testing more funky exercise in Rhino. And we, from Revit and Rhino, we could both see the models and the geometries. And then we've done also an additional step. So understanding, for example, imagining the phasing of the master plan, we know that in 2025 we're going to demolish a building. We want to know how much area we demolished. So we did a very small algorithm in a Grasshopper to understand the area required for the next stage. And then we baked into Rhino, and then that building was live synchronized and visible in the Revit model that has been launched in Omniverse Create. So very, very powerful because you can basically change the algorithm and see the things in your visualization on Omniverse Create. Ooh. Okay, and then more other technical aspects. For example, we use a lot the view comparison for overlooking on the site. And usually we use dead-end software, so like ViewCity or Enscape, so that when you enter in that environment, you can play around, but it's not live and synchronized. In this case, we were able to set up the cameras, the height of the cameras quite specifically in the Create environment and do view comparison. And then one of the last live session, which was quite interesting, as you can see as on the right side, we had a very technical report for the wind analysis that we launched as a USD file, and the wind was visible as an animation, so that it was quite readable from the client and from us, because it can be saved as a video, or is just very, very visible in create mode of the Omniverse. So the main outcome of the workflow from our team is that basically one of the most interesting things is that as a designer, I'm allowed to do my work and design in the software that I want. And I'm not constrained to a specific software. And I'm not constrained because maybe I'm not very, very good at one software environment. And also it's very interesting to see how clients are giving feedback and reacting to the viewer mode, or because giving them a standalone model sometimes can provide us better quality of comments because the design is very perceived. And then sometimes the design option can develop quicker. For example, we had an experience, not on this project, but we gave a standalone model to the pre-application, and the planners were coming back with no comments because they could really see everything about the project and they could just understand the project in the entire. And then at the end is imagining this master plan project and how many teams and how many people are involved, and having the possibility to visualize them all in one single file, from the phasing to the sustainability goals to the more technical aspect, is very powerful. And it's very, I'm looking forward to use it more because it's very, very interesting. Oh, well, thank you. That's it.
That was wonderful. Thank you both. Any questions for Elvis and Julia? Well, I don't have to. I should use the mic. Let's try that again. Any questions for Elvis? There you go.
Quick question for the signage design. So you were finding signs that were wrong, but how do you capture, for example, if I'm walking through and I feel like, I wish there was something here. Did you capture that as well? How do you capture the missing features, not just redesigning the existing? Because it's in what you're doing, you're almost assessing an existing option, but how can you develop new options from that?
Yeah. Thank you. So the answer is that we captured the missing sign. I think I didn't make it very clear, but when people stall and go in circle, and therefore becomes a red dot, that in the first case it was a missing sign. Yeah. So the design is not performing for humans. And therefore we capture that. I think that this gives me opportunity to talk about a bit that I left out, which is that we still need you don't always have a Biennale opportunity. So can you do it online? That's great, but can you train an AI, which instead of what Cobus talked about, which is very developed and is the drive AI, this will be a walk AI. So can we use all that data to drive a walk AI, something that learns how to navigate stations? Stations are, especially MTR, they are quite standard. And so and then once you do that, you then can do multiple scenarios. So all these signs are blue. But when we discussed with Annie, she said, "Oh, I only can do the blue because they have to be the same across the entire network." But we can test purple signs. Or we can do this crazy thing. They use a signage system, which is a bit boring, but this is a cascading system, it's called. So it only tells you the information that you need to make. You need to make a decision. So at the beginning, it won't tell you, like you do in London, a Metropolitan line, Victoria line, etc. This one tells you trains. And then when you need to make a decision between the Sha-Tin and this, that is called cascading system. So you could test Hong Kong Metro, or Admiralty in this case, with a more London-style system, where you have your 5 lines, and you give them 5 colors, and you let people navigate through that way. And so the idea is, if you do enough scenario, and then you send out an AI that, or a lot of people, but more practically speaking, an AI, then you can test a lot more. You can test designs, and it's a great question, because basically, are you refining design, or are you designing itself? And this, we call it data-driven design, which is highly misused in my opinion, because a lot of data-driven design you see is actually algorithmic-driven design, which is different. And so you could actually get there, but we are, yeah. And I think Cobus mentioned it in his presentation. Once you are in an environment like Omniverse, you can do all this, which in our case, it was a little bit of stitching things together and get in. I didn't realize, I didn't say that for those of you interested in CFD, our CFD was translated from the CFD package, I think was Fluent, into our environment with VRML. Some of you may remember VRML. And VRML only brings the direction of the face, and it gets the colors, right? And so what we had to do is we had to physically model the arrows. So the arrow is actually a geometrical model in our model. And this is very cumbersome, let's say. And then each arrow will get the data from the Fluent, and it will change direction, change color, and gives you the image that you now see in Omniverse. I still don't know how you guys do it, but the point is that you do it like that, and we had to climb. I mean, it was impossible at the time. So it's fantastic to see it here. Thank you.
Any more questions? invite you to come up. We're on the break, so you're certainly welcome to come up. Charlie, hang on.
What was the on-ramp time and technical challenge getting all the different tech pieces connected for that?
It was quite a bit, especially because none of us knew the technology before, and we had a couple of issues in terms of security because the model has to be on a external server, but I think I would say a month to make it run, and then from there it was a lot of testing because it's as you saw, it was our first project, first time being involved in the live synchronization, and so they were very, very basic tests.
I think the areas we divided in our test were data accessibility, which is my favorite. Do you have the data in the company? Because if you don't have the environment to show the data, do you have the data in the first place? Because nobody makes data for nothing. So that is one. The other one, the existence of the data. The other one is the accessibility. This is a confidential project. We discussed a lot in the test, and we wanted to do a real test, like something that is complex. And so then, you have to fill in 27 pieces of paper in order to be able to work on the project. And that is, that's the accessibility. I think Kobus mentioned it, there is different ways of setting up Omniverse. So you set it up on your machine. You can do it in order to get, as Julia explained, we have it set up inside a server in the company. So for those that don't have a fast GPU, and they can remote into the remote administrator, and we have it set up in Azure. Or anyone else, but in this case it's Azure, and so that is the other way. So there is accessibility, there is that, and then there is the most controversial one, which among friends I can just mention, which is whether you want. I think Julia touched upon it, but do you want to open the design environment to your client, or collaborators for that matter, but to your client? And that actually took quite a lot of discussion. So when we showed the signage, it was very helpful because the chief architect was like, okay, we're talking about signage, right? You're not messing around with my entire design. But that obviously made us smile because that's the point. We want to have a collaboration. So these are three examples of that took time to ramp it up. In the hindsight, we were a little ambitious. I think we discussed it. We wanted to do it all. In fact, if you keep it tighter, it's probably a lot quicker. There is no reason why this environment couldn't be set up straight away because it's cloud served, right? So you can get set up if you have a good team and you don't have to break so many barriers. You can set it up straight away.